So, I love Dragon's Dogma. I don't think it's the best game, nor do I even think it's my favourite game, but I genuinely think I love it more than any other game. I want to see it improve, I want to see it prosper, I want to see it grow up and become a lawyer or a doctor or even a czar. I want to see it have many children. I want to grow old and have it take care of me, until the burden becomes too much for it, and with tears in its eyes it smothers me. Now, let me open up by saying that I'm no huge fan of director Hideaki Itsuno's other works. You probably know that. The Devil May Cry series is a massive deal to a lot of people, and while I like the ideas behind it, I've never really dug it as much as I would want to. It's just not my particular type of jam, but I can't help but respect it as one of the biggest steps forward for the hack and slash genre, or the character action genre, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it also had a huge impact on gaming as a whole, and white hair, red coat bad boys, just like, I mean, it's unspeakable how strong that is. So DMC's girth is the stuff of legend, and Itsuno directed the second, third, and fourth of the series, as well as Rival Schools, a JoJo game, and a few other things. He then went on to make Dragon's Dogma, alongside producer Hiroyuki Kobayashi, who made Resident Evil 4, you know, another genre-defining masterpiece. So Dragon's Dogma was in really good fucking hands, is what I'm getting at. So Dragon's Dogma launched, sold a few million copies like it was nobody's business, got a re-release expansion and sold a few million more, then had a re-release on PC a full 3 years later, and with zero marketing became the fastest selling game Capcom has ever had on PC. It beat out the likes of Street Fighter, Devil May Cry itself, Dead Rising, Lost Planet, and the unforgettable insta-classic of Remember Me. Of course, Capcom being Capcom, they wanted it to sell 10 million copies, and it was their most expensive production to date. And that's after all the budget cuts. Budget cuts which scaled the game down to roughly 30% of the original vision, apparently. The original vision that featured fighting dragons on the fucking moon. When it was first announced, Itsuno described it as a game he had been dreaming up since school. And who didn't? I was always more sci-fi than fantasy myself, even as a kiddo. But I can still remember myself as a little dandy lad going, gee, I do love video games. I hope that one day they have huge, massive worlds you can explore in, swing around swords, maybe cast a spell and climb on the back of a fucking dragon and stab it until it dies and then I'll be a big ol' hero. So yeah, I guess me and Itsuno had similar flights of fantasy, because Dragon's Dogma nailed it hard. Super hard. Embarrassingly hard for other, lesser attempts at the concept. In a lot of ways, the seed of Dragon's Dogma is rooted in the most classic of classics, Dungeons and Dragons. You know what's weirdly satisfying in D&D? The feeling you get when you go, I prepared for this situation. Oh no, the goblins have poison. Good thing I bought my cure poison potions. Haha, joke's on you goblins, you lose again. Oh no, this Lich Lord has an unholy prostate. Good thing I got a hold of this unholy water enema kit. Not today, undead cretin, bend over. There's a lot of consumables, buffables, and general plan-ahead moves you can make. Add a damage multiplier, a defense boost, a money adjuster, damn near everything can be prepared for and enhanced. To a detriment at some points. While it sure is satisfying to kill a gigantic Cyclops in a single stab to the eye, it certainly feels trivial after you've done it 50 times. And so while it matters way less in the Dark Arisen update, it's important to remember that in the original release, Port Crystals and Fairy Stones, which are your quick travel capability, were rare. Very rare. Extremely rare. Shit was rare. Dark Arisen added an Eternal Fairy Stone, and way more Port Crystals, eventually meaning you can set up teleport points damn near anywhere in the world. Which is cute, even if it takes away some of the hardcore D&D feel. You don't need to plan your travel so much when you can just teleport from place to place in an instant. But fuck it, let's talk about some of the real grit of why this game is a magnificent beast. Firstly, it is an action RPG worked on by people who know action RPGs. The vast majority of the weapons have a heft to them, a palpable weight to every button press. The abilities have a nice variety to them too. Assassins can pick between multiple gosh-danged parries, trap bombs, special sword strokes, dashes, invisibility, and a special move that stabbity plows your sword through whatever you're holding onto. Magic archers get explosives that embed themselves into the target and explode when hit, and every other ability they have is honestly ashamed that they aren't as cool as that. There's good options for all the classes really, except for warrior, which is slow. Until you break into the core of the game or look on the wiki, and you know where things spawn and under what circumstances, there's a very real possibility of being sucker punched by chimera and griffins. One of the things I really respect about the game is how little hand-holding the game does. The impetus to explore is overbearing, and the game encourages you to, but it will not put on boxing gloves when it puts a few knuckle-sized dents in your jaw. One of my favourite memories in the game is going, "Oh hey, I want to explore this way. Golly, these enemies are gosh damn tough. Phew, that chimera took like half an hour to beat. I wonder what's in this part of this dark, foreboding land. Devilfire Grove? What a name! I wonder what loot I'll— oh dear Jesus fuck, is that the end boss? I can barely see it! Oh my god, all my pals are dead. And there's fire everywhere. Wait, did it just grab my guy? What is happening?" The game told me to explore. I explored. And the game also taught me a valuable lesson in extreme environmental awareness using a big fire-breathing prop. Speaking of the world, the day and night cycle in this game is a pretty big deal. Going out at night has clear, lofty disadvantages, and the first time you go on a merry little jaunt during the day and find yourself coming back in the dead of night, you're under constant assault, sprinting to evade being possessed or grappled by the undead in the dim light of your lantern. It's pretty fucking poignant. The night is a horrific, scary place where drug deals and hodags thrive. You never really get over how flat out it feels when you're on your way home in the middle of the night, your path lit by a dimming lantern, when suddenly a chimera Initial D drifts into your party, mouth first. Oh yeah, the pawn system, it's okay. It's cool to take a friend's child out into the field and yell at them for raising terrible henchmen. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say about the pawn system. It's good. It's alright. It works. Yeah. So anyway, before I move on to the loose, no real big deal story, there's one last thing I want to touch on about the gameplay itself, because it feeds into the story in some ways. And that's that a good deal of Dragon's Dogma itches some MMO-esque cravings. Jane McGonigal, in her 2011 book Reality is Broken, described the feedback loop of an MMO like a drip feed of productivity. That's to say, well, while you're not actually doing anything, it gives you this weird sensation like you're getting things done. Like you have a set series of tasks and you're working through a satisfying checklist. And while it's not true of the whole game, I began to think of that comparison a lot during my time with Dragon's Dogma. When I was checking what's needed to upgrade my gear, cross-referencing with what my pawn needs too, and collating that information together with a bulletin board spreadsheet I made in Excel to plan a synergistic and optimal route to maximise my hunt flow's efficiency, something about it struck me as a little job-esque. But hey, that's nifty. Alright, so with all that said, it's time to touch on the story of Dragon's Dogma. Story in big ol' quotation marks, or speech marks, or whatever your fancy marks, because the story is led in a kind of strange way. See, the surface level reading of the initial story is pretty plain, it's rote, it's a dragon fucked up your home. A dragon takes your heart, you are now the chosen one, go kill dragon. Dragon bad. Dragon red and speak in evil growly voice with red glowy eyes and eat mans. But the game doesn't actually open with that. It opens with some other guy, some guy called Savan, who's on his way to go kill the dragon with his own posse. But just before he faces off with the dragon, the game hard cuts away. It's a tutorial that gives you a hint, a taste of things to come. So Savan's not the hero to save the day. He's not the hero. You are. That's you. You're the hero. So we get the first hint at this multi-layered story right off the bat with the opening quotation of the game. "The delightful and ever-novel pleasure of a useless occupation," by the poet Henry de Regnier. Now, I love this. This quote right here, I want to marry it. Who in their right mind would open a game about dragons and the dogmas thereof with a French poet's quote about wasting time? Who does that? It's Uno, and nobody else. Prove me wrong. No, please, prove me wrong. If you know any other games that do this, I genuinely need to know. I have a problem. So this quote right here could carry me for miles. What I said earlier about spending time mapping out the minutiae of my hunt flow synergy Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that quote. The fact that I'd spend hours upgrading gear, then swap in a new piece and do it all over again, that quote right there. 80% of the game's content is ever motherfucking novel pleasures of a gosh danged useless occupation. The game makes it abundantly clear by the time that you pick your starting class that priority numero uno is the big-ass world-destroying dragon that eats civilization for funsies. It's outright waiting for you to catch up to it. But then it swerves, nigh instantly, into pretending it isn't that big of a deal. One of the first thing that happens, post-heart theft, post-dragon eating your town is someone asks you to go find flowers for them. You know, the RPG staple. And while that's just a side quest, even the main quest is spent, in large majority, ignoring the world-destroying dragon and focusing on way less important stuff. Once you get to Gran Soren, your main town, the questline mostly features multiple stages of tackle this stuff tangentially related to the dragon. Or do not. Maybe. Just, you know, do what you want to do. Maybe you want to go spelunking in some ancient ruins with some monks, or investigate the vague crimes committed by a merchant. It doesn't matter, the dragon's not here right now. Whatever. The game implores you with all sincerity to do whatever you fucking want. And I did. I spent a good portion of the game finding skulls to give to my bandit gang leaders and feeding their pet monsters. I went and found weird lingerie in a chest secluded in a rocky outcropping miles away from anything resembling society. I had a prepubescent witch brew ale for me to take on my travels. I ignited a griffin and beat it into a pulp in a cabbage patch. And the fact that I saw a dragon eat my own heart, and it felt like a distant memory. And that's fine. You know why? Because that's a part of the story. In a number of plot events, both main quest and side quest, characters will bring it up. Why are you, Grand Hero, spending so much time making fluffy shoulder pads? The apocalypse is practically happening right now. Ha! Enjoying yourself, Arisen. Go right ahead, shit's crazy. Get drunk and party, saviour of all life. Now, I love that shit. It acknowledges the inherent weirdness in the RPG standard of big lofty goal versus someone wants to pay you to get rabbit pelts. And it works it right into the plot. But then it Neil Breen double downs it with the primary bipedal villain, Arisen.
'Tis our curse that the soul must exist in such incompletion while we remain in this material coil. And it is in that incompletion of the soul that all human suffering, pain and lamentation finds its inexorable source.
Oh, hello there, Mr. Supervillain.
Whence, then, is salvation? 'Tis not to be found in pleasure, for pleasure is but another manifestation of the soul's inchoateness. A distraction born in the flesh, it is but pain's shadow, and no less a transient illusion. For the soul cannot find true pleasure in this world.
Aren't you a sour one?
Where can we look to find such balance? Wherein lies the equilibrium our tortured world seeks? In the dragon, bestower of fear to all man in equal measure. The dragon is a force by which the world will right itself, and we are duty-bound to recede our souls unto it. If we seek freedom from pain unending, and comfort in the consistency of the soul made complete, we must submit to its fiery arbitration.
Alright, let's fucking do this. Okay, deep breaths. The dragon is a symbol of balance, equality, and finality. The dragon is a symbol of death. By Elysian statements, and the whole lot of symbolism throughout the whole damn game, the dragon is a clear standing representative of death as a concept. And Elysian praises death as an absolute, a point from which we can derive meaning and purpose in our existence. That's funky. Isn't it funky? I mean, we spend the entire game ignoring the dragon and distracting ourselves from its existence. And when we finally do face it, we try to conquer it and overcome it. Isn't that funky? So, The Myth of Sisyphus was a 1942 book written by Albert Camus, concerning itself with philosophy, existential and absurdist, as well as absurdist works of art, and a few other things here and there. Camus got a little bit weird with it. So, absurdism concerns itself primarily with the question of, is there a meaning to life? Which it answers pretty resolutely with no. If there is one, we're never going to know it, but we're all going to innately try to find one anyway, and from that we get this immense sense of despair. It's kind of a shitty situation. So, the book very specifically investigates suicide as a solution to living in a meaningless void. But it also decries that as an absurd notion, but we'll get on that later. Hint, hint. So as I said, the book kind of involves itself with saying how, even if there is a meaning to life and everything in it, we're never going to know it. It's not going to happen. There's just so much going on, it's confusing, there's politics, there's space, it's too much, we're never going to know. So I feel like Dragon's Dogma embodies this in, let's call it its first half. The dragon is a regular in Grancis, after all. He comes around every now and then, steals someone's heart to make them into an Arisen, then he fucks off to give them a minute to catch their breath, all while threatening to eat and or kill everyone in the country. There's no given grand reason until the Arisen meets Grigori directly. So up until that point, the only thing we really have to go off is Elysian Palpatine's spiel about how the dragon is going to unite us by killing us all off at once and putting us into the void together. And who wouldn't trust that face? And honestly, he's kind of right. To the average Joe, just the average Joe villager, you're just looking at this big, gigantic beast that's threatening to kill and eat everyone. Like, there's no grand scheme to it, it's just happening around you. And besides even that, the hills are just filled with harpies, goblins, chimeras, gruffaloes, griffins, smaller dragons, hodags, zombies, liches, ghosts, hydras, lava bears, and even the Jersey Devil. Being pointlessly murdered by colourful fauna and flora is common nature. This just happens. Whatever is going on in this world, you are dead. Whatever you achieve is rendered null by the existence of this society-consuming dragon. But even before then, just look at this shit.
What is your purpose here, Arisen? If you sought to live, you had naught but run and hide yourself away. But then, tell me, child of man, what does it mean to live in truth? To wage war against the passing of days. To pray to the unseen for a few breaths more. To raise grand cities from stone and spawn new life in turn. Heed well this place, Arisen. Know the frailty of the works of man. This hold once stood proud and firm. 'Twas the foolish decision of a man too weak that brought it down.
This scene takes place in a ruined keep attached to a completely and utterly destroyed city, which is speculated to have been the site of one of the other times the dragon has actually destroyed a city, or eaten everyone in it, or otherwise just, you know, done its dragony thing and fucked everything up. The city's past is entirely forgotten, and even its name is gone. It's been assumed that a figure in the lore called God King Leonard held it as a capital, but fat lot of luck that did for him. Look at it. He got fucked. And while it's a bit of a stretch, I like to think that this is a kind of the existential horror of Dragon's Dogma. No matter what happens, no matter what you achieve, eventually a new dragon will appear. Imagine living in that world where every few years a dragon just shows up and fucks everything up, or is killed by a person who inevitably becomes some sort of ruler or king. Like, the dragon is a problem, and it's an endless chain. Eventually, no matter what, the denizens of Grancis will have their history wiped clean. It's only a matter of time until an Arisen fucks up and dies. But hey, what would it matter? They'd all be dead anyway. And hey, how crazy is it to even oppose this eternally returning chain? You have to fight a dragon that dwarfs you. You are the size of its toenail. And it's initially a completely unassailable beast. The first time you fight it, you might just barely manage to make a slight dent in one of its many health bars. The game makes it out very early on that you ain't got a single fucking chance. If I see a man armed with only a sword attack a group of machine guns, I shall consider his act to be absurd, but it is solely by virtue of the disproportion between his intention and the reality he will encounter, of the contradiction I notice between his true strength and the aim he has in view. So saith the great Camus. Accidentally creating hordes of action protagonists, by the way. Of course, Camus' quote here is in reference to how ridiculous it is to pursue an innate, deep-down meaning for all of existence. It is laughable. Don't do it. Don't do that, kids. It's dangerous. It's like trying to say kill a mythical beast the size of a warehouse with a sword. It can summon lightning and shit, don't do it! But let's conflate it a bit more, shall we? The Arisen is unaging and immune to most natural causes of death, but is bound by fate to address the dragon, a symbol of death. It could be thus argued that the absolute optimal outcome for the Arisen is to defeat and conquer death, even though it restores his or her mortality. Despite this, the dragon offers each Arisen a deal. Sacrifice what's most important to them, have a wish granted, and we'll just hold on to that heart for you, don't you worry, we'll keep it nice and safe. After all, if you're going to sacrifice what you love, you won't fucking need it. So, let's look at a couple examples. For one, there is the God King Leonard scenario I talked about earlier, who sacrificed his city by the sounds of it. And that didn't work out well for him. Who the fuck is he? Duke Edmund Dragonsbane took the offer as well, and he earned the title of Worm King to go along with his duchy. He sacrificed, as far as we can be sure, the woman he loved most by the name of Lenore. He's all choked up about it, as you can see here. All the power, wealth, strength, fame, admiration, and creepily young wives couldn't scrub the shame out of the literal void in his chest. Even with a wife named Lenore. Wow, fuck you, Edmund. But hey, at least he's immortal. That's nifty, right? Let's turn back to good Uncle Camus to see his thoughts on this. And who, without revolution and without contempt, can remain a slave? What freedom can exist in the fullest sense without assurance of eternity? You see, I think this applies because, despite the fact that Edmund is immortal, and is in no danger ever as far as we see him, he's still kinda fucked. Maybe even more so than normal. Could he have beaten Grigori? Maybe, maybe not. He didn't think he could, and there's some semblance of martyrdom in the fact that he would rather sacrifice Lenore than risk total societal reset. But with all he gained and for all the worth of his immortality, Grigori comes back. At that point, it's a kind of a dice roll about how he's fucked. Dragon wins, everyone loses. Arisen wins, Edmund loses. Now, let's go down the correct route where the Arisen wins. There's also the option where you can take the dragon's deal and you become the Duke, and that happens, I guess. But let's focus on what the actual main route, you know, the good guy route. So, Arisen wins, and Edmund ages like 50 years nearly instantaneously. What's more, a gigantic sinkhole appears, consuming half of his city, and from it pours all manner of even worse shit than was already roaming around. And in his panic and fear, he believes the Arisen took the deal to usurp him. And the last time we see this dumbass is when he's telling his guards to execute us. That's how you tie up a plot thread, guys. So this is where the game gets kind of expressionist, I guess? You get chased into the sinkhole and fall. And fall. And fall infinitely, forever, always. When you hit the bottom, you appear at the top. Now, lining the walls are various rooms that they're just challenge rooms. Don't worry about them. There's some stuff in there. There's some cool fights. There's some cool loot. That's about it. There's nothing actual like plot stuff heavy in there. There's only one real point of progress. For whatever reason, you bring 20 magical rocks to a pawn from the tutorial of the game, and she opens up a portal to God. Alright. Hey kids, wanna meet God? In the world of Dragon's Dogma, God is known as the Seneschal. Seneschal? Seneschal? Let's go Seneschal. Now, Seneschal, effectively means Major Domo or Housekeeper Steward. Steward is a good one for it. So, in the world of Dragon's Dogma, God is a housekeeper. Yep, that's nice. So you meet God, and they implore you to defeat them and become as God, provided you have the grit, determination, and gumption to inherit the world. They demonstrate this power by creating you, naked, and pushing you down.
Just as you call forth horns, so I command all life into existence. Call it divine creation if you must, but expect none of the mercy men seek in their gods. This is cold truth. The unbending reality of a world without compassion.
Hey, that thing he says, it reminds me of what my favourite Frenchman named Albert Camus said one time. At this point of his effort, man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. So the world really doesn't give a shit about you. The world's busy being the world. You're not getting any goddamned answers to any questions that start with why.
Without volition, there is no true life. The world falls stagnant, dead as an ocean with no current to guide it. That volition is tempered by the struggle for survival. The decision, just like yours, to fight. Just as the pawns need a master's command, so the world thirsts for the will to live.
All people really want a meaning, a grand purpose. But fuck you, no greater power is going to give you one. Belief in a higher power might have merit, but shit, why don't you act like the Arisen instead?
Let us continue this track. Show that you are more than an empty vessel, animated by forces unseen. Show that the temper of your soul is strong enough to command far more than mere pawns. Show that your will is fit to bind the fraying circle of this world and hold it fast. Fight tooth and claw. Struggle now and cling to life. Show that living holds worth enough to fight for.
Yo, Uncle Camus, you want to chime in on this? It was previously a question of finding out whether or not life had to have a meaning to be lived. It now becomes clear, on the contrary, that it can be lived all the better if it has no meaning. Living an experience, a particular fate, is accepting it fully, the purest of joys which is feeling and feeling on this earth. The present and the succession of presents before a constantly conscious soul is the ideal of the absurd man. Life doesn't need a meaning. It's life. The Arisen/me had a gosh danged dragon over there, doing his shit, fucking things up, but I wanted to do everything in my power to make sure that my jacket and cape looked really good. I wanted to hunt rabbits for their pelts. I wanted to go to some crazy island and kill the Grim Reaper. The looming threat of impending doom to all represented in Grigori can wait until after I turn the Grim Reaper's lantern into a pair of shoes. And, there's something about that weird irony that hits the cockles of my heart, It gets me just where I need to be hit. In the cockles. So you beat the sensual god down, and he only has one thing to ask of you. Please kill him. He longs for the release. He's tired, he's browbeaten. He just wants to stop being. It's not a fun job, in fact. Being God is just dull. You could almost say he's given up the will to be God, because what purpose is there? His job honestly seems pretty much automated. He just watches and waits, never accomplishing anything, never interacting with anyone, and then you finally turn up to kill him. And he's happy about it, he wants it, he loves that shit. So, I guess well done, you get to be God now. What are your options? Well, you can walk around the main hubs of the game, just doing nothing. You get to invisibly interact with nobody. You get to do nothing that has any meaning. You get to watch people walk around. So I guess, congratulations, you're a divine voyeur. Godhood has no meaning or real genuine purpose. Fantastic. But wait, there's more. Throughout the myth of Sisyphus, Camus repeatedly returns to the ostensible theme of suicide. If there is no meaning, why don't we kill ourselves? To paraphrase. As said earlier, he answers it with, because living is good and moving forward has subjective value individually. But in the latter parts of the book, he dissects the work of Dostoevsky. I'm not going to pronounce that right, ever. It's not going to happen. He specifically goes into one called The Possessed, where I found this juicy little tidbit. Kirillov is consequently an absurd character. Yet with this essential reservation he kills himself. But he himself explains this contradiction, and in such a way at the same time he reveals the absurd secret in all of its purity. In truth, he adds to his fatal logic an extraordinary ambition, which gives the character its full perspective. He wants to kill himself to become God. To become God is merely to be free on this earth, not to serve an immortal being. Above all, of course, it is drawing all the inferences from that painful independence. If God exists, all depends on him, and we can do nothing against his will. If he does not exist, everything depends on us. For Kirillov, as for Nietzsche, to kill God is to become God oneself. It is to realize on this earth the eternal life of which the Gospel speaks. Now, this one isn't exactly applicable to real life, I hope, but in the world of Dragon's Dogma, the inner struggle rises from within, slowly but surely. First, you distract yourself from your duty. You seek base pleasures and fulfillment while shirking the giant red lizard that's threatening to reset humanity. Then, you conquer it, and with it you conquer death itself, having chosen to pursue your own will, those you care for, and that which you may enjoy. And in doing so you have saved the world. Only instead you made things substantially worse. The world is punishing you for taking the more difficult path. And to make matters worse, you gave up on immortality for this. So finally you face the root of the problem. Reality and life itself, represented in the godlike being of the Sensual, and through will and grit you conquer even God, and become one as a result. Your quest has driven you against the very edges of existential thought, or at least personifications of it, and you pushed straight through it. And the god you found describes himself as weary as you kill him. The Sensual's last words are,
"Mourn me not, for I welcome the release. At long last, I am free of eternity, of infinity, free of the cruel, unending ring."
Once again, Camus? Weariness comes at the end of the acts of a mechanical life, but at the same time it inaugurates the impulse of consciousness. It awakens consciousness and provokes what follows. What follows is the gradual return into the chain, or it is the definitive awakening. At the end of the awakening comes, in time, the consequence, suicide or recovery. Becoming God was a one-way ticket, and if you find that it isn't your particular cup of tea, you only have one real option. Not a cowardly one, I would say, but a permanent one. Now, there's not a lot more to say about this gem of a game that's been in my mind for years now, but I do think there's something beautiful and poignant and meaningful that the final decision afforded to the player is it better to be dead or an eternally bored god? Right, okay, fuck me, I've been writing this fucker for way too long, and there's so much fucking more I could jump into as well. The soundtrack and its killer leitmotif that stands up alongside Metal Gear Solid and all the other really memorable catchy game tunes, and the grounded Dark Souls-esque narrative of the Bitter Black Isle with all of its fucking crazy shit. And the more in-depth side quests as well, with their emotional, thoughtful peaks at times. The game's great, just fucking go get it already, Jesus Christ, if you don't have it already, get it. Do it now, do it. Now, I'll hang a vaguely emotional Camus quote up at the end screen while I taper off, but late 2016, Itsuno said that he was itching to announce a new game in 2017. Now, it's probably going to be Devil May Cry 5, or DMC2, or maybe somehow he'll get to work on a fighting game like he's always wanted to. But when I see the original plan for Dragon's Dogma, and I think about how much I cherish the game, and when I think about how much potential there is in making a sequel with better informed decisions and knowledge on what works and what doesn't, it's just, I love it, I want it, I need it. It's a special game, and honestly I love it. I love it enough to spend months recording playthroughs of it. Enough to take notes while at work when things pop into my head. Enough to buy and read through the fucking Myth of Sisyphus just to make sure I'm digging as deep as I can dig. I love you, Dragon's Dogma. Fuck Skyrim.